So let me get this straight. Here we got the queen of the Amazons. Amazons who are supposed to see men as second class or distance themselves from them. They're female warriors and they don't care about the greed of men. They stand on their own. And yet you have the queen distraught because her suitor, who's a man, hasn't called back to her in some girly fucking fashion. Yeah, we're in for a ride with this one. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho, and this is Mob Reviews, and today we're going to take a look at King's Bounty: The Dark Side. This was created by 1C Soft Club, available for PC, and it is a hexagon, sort of beehive style, turn-based strategy with a written story led into it. Now, if you're familiar with the King's Bounty series, there are about 4 or 5 of them now. You have the Legend, Crossworlds, Armored Princess, Warriors of the North, and now this one, The Dark Side. Being a fan of the series, kind of stretching that word fan quite a lot, I enjoy the combat tactical mechanics. So, if you're worried that my enjoyment of a game will cloud my judgment, then don't worry at all, because this review will definitely shine light on the good qualities that the game offers and the negative ones, and bring it to justice where a lot of other people will just get sidetracked by, ooh, the combat is lovely, isn't it? Well, what about the rest of the game? And that's what we're here to answer. And we will begin in the options menu. The options menu has pretty much stayed the same aesthetic throughout all of the series. There really hasn't been any changes if you're not used to that. And if this is your first time, then you have a wide berth of screen resolutions, which is definitely nice. So you have that, and you have the texture quality for what you need in the game to get by. Music and sound all split up on different sliders. The music in the game does propel the story and atmosphere, although sometimes it slacks off a little bit and it's just easier to play your own music in the background. And you have sound. Now it is a story, but there is no actual dialogue being spoken, so you don't have that. Everything is written and read, but the story has never been the strong points of this series, and we'll go more into that once we talk about story. When it comes to performance, it has been running at 60 frames per second. There has been no clipping or tearing. Unfortunately, there are the occasional crashes. Now you can press F5, which is quick save, before after every battle. Thus, for the most part, saving the progression that you made, although this continuational habit may break you out of the immersion or be slightly annoying, as crashes do happen. Now, they are not as frequent as in Warriors of the North, which was their last game. Warriors of the North had a shit ton of bugs, which continued to crash the game, continued to mess up with performance. They seem to iron those out in this regard to this game. I have not suffered the greatest inconvenience of bugs, just a small crash bug, which still in its own weight can be annoying, especially seeing how it happens during battle. So if you're in battle and the battle is fairly long, whether it be 10 minutes or about there, and the game crashes about 90% through, it can be very annoying and makes you not want to play anymore. This ties into the performance overall of the entire game, as it adds a negative factor that doesn't help the other areas in the game which aren't that strong on their own. Now, it's very important that I go about this review in a professional manner, as I always do. For those who don't know what King's Bounty is, I'm going to go over a rundown of the abilities, the classes, and the spells that you can expect. Now, obviously, the spells won't be a complete list because you gather them as you go, and you may not find all of them depending on your difficulty and variables of randomness. But you'll get a gist of what's going on, what has been improved, what has been diminished. And we'll begin with a simple new game. Now, it is a turn-based strategy style game, which means you take troops into battle against enemies, and you have to fight your armies with using synergy in between the troops, in between the spells, and defeat the enemy in some fashions. Whether it be an understanding of tactics or capability, luck, or whatever variable you're hoping for or skill you have, they do have a large variable of difficulty sliders, which is nice. Now, these difficulty slides don't just increase the enemy troop. As you can see on easy, the enemy strength is only 50%. Your gold income after battles, gold being items that you buy, whether it be gear to increase your stats, money which is needed to buy new troops or more advanced troops, which is the lifeblood of the game, and battle rage, which increases hero special powers. On easy, enemy will be weak and your bonuses will be strong. As you can see, normal decreases 100 across the board. On hard, the enemy strength goes up, but yet again, your gold income comes down and your battle rage goes down, meaning that you need to be more prepared to deal with enemies in a strategic manner, and you need to be aware that the more troops you lose, the less money you're going to have, and you may bind yourself into a corner where you have no more money to defeat the enemies because you've spent it all on troops that you've been just feeding to a slaughter. And on impossible, you can see the enemy strength goes up 170, gold goes down, and battle rage again. So it does play a huge role into the difficulty of how advanced a tactician you may actually be. Now, in the past games, they've had fighter, a paladin type champion, and a mage. They've kind of kept that exactly the same, but wanted to add some sort of diversity because this one's supposed to be the dark side. Ooh, so spooky. So the fighter is an orc, and the champion who leads many troops is a demoness, and a vampire is the mage. Now, you can't be a demoness, mage, or some variable like that. They each have a class. You're picking a class here. That's why I feel they titled race and class together, which was kind of stupid in the story element alone. When we go into the game, so you can understand exactly what that means. What does it mean to be a fighter? What does it mean to be a paladin or a champion of sorts and a mage? It does have its differences in playing of the classes. There will be a huge difference, and I'm going to describe that to you right now. If you pick the warrior, then you'll gain more attack and defense. And as you can see here, the effectiveness of a hero's attack, if the attack exceeds the target's defense, the target suffers more damage. At a maximum, the damage increased to 300%. So if you are a warrior, you'll be gaining more attack style gear, defense and attack, and your attack will get much higher. Now you'll combine that with items of crit, and you'll be able to do a lot of damage to your enemies and really dominate the battlefield and say, hey, I am powerful, I am strong. Defense is exactly what you would expect it to be. If a hero's defense exceeds the aggressor's attack, then the damage suffered will decrease accordingly. At maximum, the hero will take only 1/3 of the damage. Now when it says the hero, it means the troops of the hero, because the troops you lead into battle are the units that fight against each other. Your hero isn't actually fighting in the battle outside of casting spells. He can't be damaged. It's your troops and the conquering of the battlefield which really matters. And magic, each point affects damage by 5%, and every 7th level increases this by additional 15% damage. Every 20 points increases the duration of certain spells by 1 round. So items or spells that would last 3 rounds will obviously last more if you have the correct level of intelligence. Your gear, as we scroll over the gear, will inflict upon how your character is built for. If you're a mage, like myself here in this, you'll go for intelligence and more mana. You'll try to focus areas around being smarter and gaining more mana pools so you can rely more heavily upon your spellbook and not be so much worried about the fact that you don't have as many troops as the warrior or the leader. Now, how do you gain troops and how are troops managed? I'm going to go over this very carefully because I know it's a lot of information. There's a lot of information here to take in, but it's pretty simplistic. Like we said before, you have attack, defense, and intelligence. Intelligence affects your spells, defense affects the armor rating of your troops, attack gives a bonus to your troops' attack. So far simple. All these slots here on your companion or on you give a bonus depending on the gear. It can be experience, increase in rage, increase in magic or mana, which allows you to attune your character to a little bit more playstyle you want. As you can see below, my demon army here, I have 62 out of 69 available in my army. How I have that many available comes down to the leadership. When we open up a tab here, The leadership indicates how many a hero must have to command a single creature. So 300 for one creature. With your hero's leadership of 2758, I can command up to 69. And it gives the entire leadership of an entire squad. 18-6. Now that's important because 18-6. As you go through the game, you'll come across either banners as you level up, as you put points in your skill trees, which we'll go over in a moment. You gain leadership. Right here, where I'm hovering over, is your leadership. Leadership is very important. The higher leadership you have, the more troops you can take into battle. Now, depending on the style of gameplay, it doesn't necessarily matter. A warrior really relies on strength and defense and makes up for not having the most numbers, where a mage uses this spellbook to make up that shortness, and the leader, the champion, gets the most leadership because they are a little of all. They are a jack of all trades. They have some areas in warrior, they have some areas in magic, so they make up the middle ground by having more troops to compensate, which is perfectly fine. Every role has its own playstyle. So the troops that you have available to you, as you can buy troops to go into merchants, is up to you. Different troops, as you can see, attack, defense, initiative, and speed, which would be movement across boards, as well as their damage and crit per unit and their health, all play a role into how you synergize them with each other into battle. Each unit, I'm not going to go over every single unit in my army. I'm not going to go over and show you 100 list of all these different amazing creatures or different variables of that regard. But the different abilities of these units come down to passive things. Some creatures may be more immune to cold damage than fire, or some may be completely immune to mind control. There is a difference in the creatures which allow a different customization and variable to have them stand out as their own characters. This is really important. Not only do abilities allow it, but talents as well. Talents that really help cater your army into synergy with each other, which will allow you to defeat enemies and foes that you may think, oh, well, that was too dangerous, too great for me. With the right synergy, the right build, you can handle things where you perhaps may not have thought you could. And it does come down to your personal playstyle. You have to remember, oh, if I want to win on impossible difficulty, I have to play a mage. No, you can play what you want. You just have to cater your unit to your skill, to your enjoyment, and to your strengths. And realize that certain enemies, certain allies, certain units do synergize better with each other than others do. There's a place for everything. And this giant tab is pretty much just your inventory, a collection that doesn't fill up, which is nice, and a collection of items which you can use or carry on. Potions of mana, store 50 mana, and potions of rage, which are really useful in the early age of this game. Which brings us to the skills. Now, as we said earlier, there are 3 different classes, and there are 3 different schools of combat. You have the warrior, which is might, mind, which is more of the leader, and magic. Now, as you can see, there is a bottom tier in the magic category, because I'm a mage, which is not open on the other tiers, because I'm not of that class. So think of that as a specialization class. But the other element is you have these runes up above. As you can see, I have 16 magic runes, 2 spirit runes, and 1 might rune. As a mage, you'll gain more magic than you will spirit or might. But the abilities and items do cost an increase in their requirement of runes as they level up. As you can see here, 7 and 4, but might is something that you gain very slowly. As you level up, you may gain 6 magic, but only 1 might, depending on what level you're going into. But that doesn't mean that you're screwed. It just means that you're not going to have all your warrior abilities maxed out being a mage. And that's understandable because you chose to be a mage. And the same thing comes down into being a leader. You have this aura of where you're inspiring troops. You feel like the choices you make really help improve and give you an advantage on the battlefield, which is definitely nice. And magic, of course, which will allow you to cast different types of spells, increase your mana pool, increase the damage that your spells do, allow you to increase the strength of summons, or allow more mana to be regained in battle upon death of ally or enemy troops. there's a different variable, as there are schools of magic as well, which is a bit different than the mind or might. And as I said before, magic makes up for the shortcomings in the strength or numbers category, so it makes sense that magic is going to be a little bit more in depth than the other two categories. You're not going to have a huge birth of options when it comes to a warrior. Warrior do have rage, and you're saying, okay, wow, this is getting complicated. What's going on? What is rage? What are you talking about? When we look over to the left side, you have rage. Rage is accumulated during battle and is spent by using your hero power. As a warrior, you can increase how much rage you have overall and increase how much rage you gain in battle. So early on, level 1, 2, you hit an opponent, you gain 1, maybe 2 rage. Later on, you get 4, 5 rage, depending on different variables of gear and upgrades. But they all work out. Like I said, the leader has a wide berth of jack of all trades, where you get a little bit of everything to balance out, and a huge number of troops, where might relies on abilities of your hero, attack and defense, and magic's more fleshed out with increasing your magic schools to 3, which will allow you to cast more types of spells, upgrade spells, and a variable of that. So before we actually talk about the spells in the game, let's talk about the rage ability, because the rage ability is very important. Now, as I brought up this list, you can see there are different numbers next to them, 26, 32, 50. These are the amount of rage it's going to take to cast this in battle once the battle has begun. And as you can see, they do different things. As you can also see in the top corner, there is a experience bar for my little monster hero special power guy. As he levels up, you'll gain a choice of a random pick out of 3, which could be an upgrade of any of these abilities, and it'll either increase the damage, increase the capability, some variable. As you grow stronger, as you accumulate more rage more easily, these numbers and figures will grow larger, the amount they cost to activate. They won't seem so daunting anymore. 55 or 60 even, or some variable, won't seem like a lot of rage to spend, but eventually you'll get there and you'll be like, wow, I spent 60 rage, and then 2 turns later you'll have 60 rage again. It's all about the battle itself and the different upgrades you have. As you level up, the game definitely does allow you to feel more powerful and more accomplished, which is definitely one of the strong suits of this game. I am not entirely sure about all these abilities though, as some of these abilities that they decide to break up as this little dark creature mimics. As we said earlier, you have classes, a vampire, a succubus, and a orc, and it sort of mimics what this hero powers or individual traits are supposed to be, are useful, and you have to really play your strategies around these abilities. That's the main difference in between this game and the games from the past of this series, because in the past the abilities were more distinctively helpful, or they were more able to bend to what you may need it depending on your playstyle. Where I feel these, you have to more focus your playstyle around. They are less supportive and more mainstream demanding. Yes, absolutely, there are some which do have their uses, but they either don't really hold that weight to back it up, or they're not long-term solution and giving you a real run for the amount of rage you're spending. And in comparison, because this game has to be compared by its predecessors, I personally don't feel that the abilities really stand out or really allow you to have a customization. I really don't feel that these abilities are as useful or as enjoyable as ones from past games, and that's what it comes down to. I don't feel they are as enjoyable as ones from the past, which is unfortunate. Now we're going to go on and talk about spells. Real briefly, just a quick glance over into the spells, as you have 3 different categories of spells, and you have Wanderer Scrolls. Now we're going to talk briefly about magic and scrolls. There are a way to increase how many scrolls you can carry throughout the game, which kind of feel a bit weak, as we find this ability plus 15 scrolls and reduced cost of learning with scrolls as spells are learned from scrolls. Now what is this? You have 3 schools of magic. And as you can see here, Call of Nature is rank 3. I click over it, says rank 3, summons, it's powerful. Well, this is rank 2. It's a different spell, so of course it's going to cost different. But if I wanted to upgrade it, it's going to increase it from 2 to 4, increase the duration, but it requires 1 crystal to upgrade that. As you can see here, I have a spell Power of Light, and I can learn this spell by clicking on that little button, and now I have this that will use mana, and it's in my book. I don't have to worry about running out. The thing is that you can easily and very fast run over the amount of scrolls that you can carry, and when you come across a scroll in a merchant, you'll not be able to necessarily buy it because you're so filled up. Either you're saving something up because you're running out of crystals or some variable. But scrolls really aren't used all that much later on in the game, and they just become really a hassle. The enemies you fight don't push you to that max where using scrolls are needed. They become byproducts which don't really benefit you all that much, and later endgame annoying, because unless you want to throw them away, which I do not enjoy doing, wasting resources like that, or just letting them rot in your inventory. So as you can see, the Order is more of a support and buffing school of magic. And you have Distortion, which increases other areas, such as Stone Skin, gives you armor increase, Phantom, which can definitely be useful in different areas, Teleport away from a group of enemies if you so desire. If you have the correct capability or fighting the right unit, you can Hypnotize. There's even Target. If you upgrade this properly, it can be really useful. So it's all about synergy. So say I have the availability and I use Hypnosis on one of the enemy troops. Well, now the enemies may not attack him, or they may, depending on variables. But I can then also throw Target onto him, so the appropriate creatures, enemy creatures, will see him as a target. It's the resemblance of saying, hey, I'm going to cast Taunt for this target, and everybody will go after him. It can be very useful in ridding enemies at times, and it's really just about the correct combination or usage of spells. Reduce health, perhaps with plague, or armor, or weapon attacks. Do direct damage with poison. It's really up to you as to how exactly you want to combine different abilities with your own troops. So it does play a role. You also have Wanderer spells, which are special scrolls you can come across throughout the world, which will either give you a bonus to your mana, or attack, or defense, or rage. They allow certain variables to give you that little bit of edge in case you're having an issue somewhere. So that is pretty much the skills, the layout, and the understanding of what makes this game tick. It may look like a lot, it may be really confusing at first, and should you play a game in this series, you're like, whoa, this is a lot. It's not. All you have to do is read. Just read the skills, upgrade gear when you need it, and if you're warrior, go after attack and defense. If you're mage, go after intelligence. It's not as complicated as it seems. It may seem like a lot of information, but it's really simplistic. It's really straightforward and easy. And that covers the base for anybody who didn't exactly know what this game is. And so now we talk about, well, how good is the game? Because now I understand what's happening on the screen. Now I understand what opponents are doing. Like, hey, I have enemies here, they're allies here, they're moving about, but what's going on? You should have a better understanding now. So how does it work? What is the driving point of this game? And that would have to be the combat. This series, the King's Bounty series, is definitely known for its combat, its tactical combat and depth. The depth coming from the magical spells or the hero power. That is this game's strongest point. The combat in the game is fun. There's no going about it. It is highly enjoyable. It is perhaps addictive or very satisfying in some regards. The problem I have with the game is that it's too fucking easy. Now, some people will disagree with me. Pretty sure a lot of people actually would disagree with me and say, oh, you're crazy, you're high, whatever, this game's insane. And there is a level of truth to that, to a small point. Dark Side is a lot more difficult than the other games in this series. The continuation of difficult numbers that you face continue to rise. Enemy ranking structure goes very weak, weak, slightly weaker, equal in strength, slightly stronger, strong, very strong, deadly, and invincible. Now, in the other series, once it hit about mid-game, I would be seeing only maybe 1 or 2 armies that were invincible, and I would attack those armies and I would destroy them, and everything else on the island or zone would be pretty much easy prey. Now, I will give it props. Darkside has increased its difficulty to a point. They, unfortunately, really raised the bar high in the beginning of the game. The beginning of the game, you're scrounging around for money. You're trying to find whatever advantage you can not to die, to get together what troops you can, defeat the enemies where you can, and you do struggle, and that struggling is good. It's about asserting yourself, getting the right units, getting that playstyle, getting that edge, getting the area that you enjoy down pat. And in the beginning of this game, it may actually be too difficult. Now, I cannot be a judge of how the difficulty plays on anything less than impossible, because I only play this game on its hardest setting, and I found that the beginning of the game was challenging way more than the others of the series. I can assume, from my difficulty and what I've read, other people may have issues with the difficulty even on a lower setting. Because of the way the level is designed, and I'm not going to fully get into level design yet, but the way the beginning world of your adventure is designed, it really does put you in an awkward position where you're up against the wall. You're really fighting against the odds. And I know that's sort of what they're going for in regards to a story, but that is also the point where you feel you're weakest, and it will be the hardest point in the game. The beginning of this game, the first 15 or so levels, more so than Warriors of the North. When I was playing Warriors of the North, it was the first island that you started on which was the most difficult, because it did come down to chance of randomization of what the enemy had. In this regard, the most difficult part does span a little bit longer, as you do end up facing a lot more opponents. As I said, from the beginning of this game to where I am now, the majority have been invincible type enemies, the strongest ranking of enemies that I can find. So I come up against an enemy on one isle, and usually all are either invincible or deadly or invincible, or somehow maybe I missed a guy somewhere and they're just strong in some regard. The point is that the difficulty has been increased to a point, but not enough. Because I hit mid-level game, and going from mid-level to endgame, I'm bored. I go across these invincible armies, and I just slaughter them continuously. I kill them, I barely lose any troops, if any at all, and I move on. Now you may say, hey, then why don't you just change your unit layout? Why don't you take less troops into battle? Why don't you use a different formation or attack pattern? And it's not an abuse of a system. I'm not abusing mechanics in the game to gain an upper advantage. I'm just using what is in there tied to my gear and my skill. And I shouldn't have to dumb down my playstyle in order to find a challenge. I wish to be facing a challenge at my strongest. Otherwise, it's no fun. And the whole point of playing a game is to have fun. And if I can't be challenged, then what is the point? So unfortunately, this game suffers, even with its increase in difficulty, with the same problematic issue that it has in the past series, that once you get to mid-game to endgame, it's easy. So easy that it becomes boring and redundant. Yes, the combat may be fabulous and enjoyable and fun, but it becomes too simplistic. The enemies are too easy. In between my time playing this entire series, not just Darkside, but also past games of King's Bounty, I can only remember one battle out of the countless hours I have put into these games. One battle where I actually had to try, where I actually remember an epic battle. I actually had a feeling of, whoa, that was epic, that was amazing, that was something special, I can't believe I survived that, or I gave it everything I had. Those battles are so rare. because the difficulty doesn't increase on a challenge. They go through all this trouble to divvy it up in between easy, normal, hard, impossible, but then impossible becomes a fucking joke mid-game to endgame. There's no difficulty. And even if you see two enemy armies moving together and it's like, hey, we're both invincibles, it would have been nice. It would have been so nice to have them be able, if they get too close to each other, to actually connect and actually like merge into one army. Give me a challenge. Stop fucking pissing me around. And that comes into a serious issue later on. Because what are we left with? If a combat becomes so dull and so boring later on, what are we left with? We're left with a story. A story that this game in its series is not known for. Whether it be Armored Princess, Warriors of the North, they may get by here and there. They may just make the mark barely, but there's definitely not grade A writing in those lines, in the transactions of conversation. And this one just fails horribly. There's no, well, maybe if they tried better, or maybe if they succeeded a little bit more here and there. No. King's Bounty Dark Side is horribly written. Just horrible. This entire game is standing on a premise of the combat, which is really no different, minus some spell tweaks, some unit tweaks, and a different hero power than the past games. The combat is no different than other games in the series. Graphically, no different. The story, worse. The story is appalling. You are supposed to be a dark side creature, an orc, a succubus, a vampire, and yet you continually go through the world as a complete dumbass. Your little companion sidekick tells you what to do, like you're a child. You talk to somebody, a witch, and you're like, wow, you're really upset. I'll be back later because I made you upset. And then the little buddy you have is like, wait, where are you going? We can use this against her. It's like, yeah, no shit we can use this against her. Or no shit, this obviously blatantly obvious subject matter can be used for our advantage. And our character is so fucking retarded. He's just like, duh, which way do I go, George? It's like, are you serious? So you have me trying to be immersed in a game that eventually gets boring and then continuously pushes upon me this idiotic conversation dialogue with just horrible writing and zero respect for the actual character that is supposed to be going through this. Hello, I am a dark side character. Would you like to be my friend? Really? I'm a dark side character who's supposed to be conquering the entire world and turning island after island over to the dark side in some sort of alliance or conquering method. I'm destroying armies of humans, but this game feels more like Hello Little Pony on a bad hair day. It's not enjoyable, and it ruins the aesthetic, it ruins the atmosphere. When we go into the quest log itself, I have multiple issues with this quest log, not only with its interface, which continues to just bombard you with holy crap, you have quest after quest after quest after quest, and your book just fills up, but that's not bad enough. As you can see, I'm scrolling through and it's just so many, but then it also on the exact same page, instead of making a separate tab, it has all of your completed quests. So you have to horribly try to find that one quest in the 40 that you have active at any time to be like, hey, what is that one quest I want to do? Oh, I have to go through 40 of these different quest logs to find that one. And you think, oh, are these quests at least good? Or, I mean, what are they? They don't make you feel powerful. There's not really like a, oh, this quest will make me feel stronger, or this quest will allow me to assert my power, or this quest will make me feel more enhanced in my abilities. I don't know, because I do know what they do, and what they do is a bunch of fucking carrying quests. Hey, welcome to my shop. Take this package over to the other island, then once you get there, take it to 4 more other islands, and then bring it back to me. And if that's not bad enough, I mean, I can get past it. You know, that's annoying, that's frustrating, that's time wasting, and that's the majority of the thing. These quests do not respect your time at all. These quests are horrible. These quests do not make you feel empowered whatsoever. And the fact that you're supposed to be playing as a dark creature, and so many of them are find a princess who will marry a pirate. Find a worthy bride for the king. There are all these sort of romantic marriage quests, which are just so fucking stupid. It's kind of hard to feel like a badass dark side character who's trying to take over the world when you talk to somebody and they're like, oh, I want some flowers and a pretty dress and a husband, or why don't you find me a wife because then I could have a marriage and I'd be so happy. Yeah, instead of me just saying, hey, how about this? I'm a creature of the night. I'm going to rip you apart and turn you into a skeleton and take what the fuck I want from your shop, or take this land, or take this throne, or some regard. It says, I'll play matchmaker, I'll be a little bitch boy, I'll be a little errand running pal. If you're gonna put me in the aesthetic, if you're gonna say, here you go, why don't you play as a dark side creature? Don't fucking back out like a pussy and be some little bitch. Actually man up and fucking make quests that support and enthrall a character of darkness. You don't have to go all out. You don't gotta be like, oh, hang dead bodies on the town square. But if you take over a town, it should change the atmosphere. You shouldn't have to do continuational quests. There are so many which are a waste of money. There are money dump quests in this game, which is stupid. So effing stupid. Hey, hello innkeeper, will you tell me about this area? Now you gotta take in fact, you land on an island, you're a dark creature, you're invading this island, you're talking to an innkeeper who's loyal to the king, who serves the light, whose armies protect the realm. You are a creature of dark, let me re-emphasize that. You're asking this guy for information, and he says, oh sure, for 100,000, for 50,000 gold, I'll tell you what you want to know. Really? Then you buy these items, or you give this guy his money, and you waste and waste and waste and throw away more of your money, and you may end up fighting him anyways. It's like, oh, thanks for the money, but screw you, I'm gonna try to double stab you, and you have to kill him anyways? It's so fucking stupid. There is already a area in this game where you can dump your money to buy runes at an exuberant amount, of course, and that's perfectly fine because it's there to be a money dump. You can buy runes or crystals at a crazy cost, which rises the more you buy. So there is already a place to dump your money, yet they continuously have these quests in the game which say, give us 100,000 for this information and then I'm going to betray you anyways, or some stupid shit. The quests make it unplayable. The combat may be good, but the combat's not different from our other series. The combat doesn't have anything different than the other games. And the story has never been a driving point for the series. So the fact that they have the story being a negative factor this time around, and a pretty large one, very large, detrimentally game-breakingly large, yes, that makes this game like what the fuck. Which ties into our last point. Level design. Now when it comes to level design, you explore and you start out by exploring different islands, fighting the enemies on those islands, doing quests, gathering up items, so on and so forth. But it's the adventure that you take in between the different world islands which allow the game to open up more. Now I like the fact that they have so much content in the landmass size of the game. You have a lot of different islands that will eventually become unlocked to you as you progress through the game and you destroy more enemies. But the issue which comes to is the base level design itself. The world may be fine and large and dandy, and you have all these different islands. While some of these islands are very easy to navigate or get around and not have any problem with, they went a different course than the earlier games. They made it more complicated or convoluted. They said, let's have high rises and low rises. Let's have different pathways crossing all through the map. Let's make islands much larger and much more territory, but less enemies walking amongst them. A lot more open spaces and roadways. But what's different in this game versus the other of the series is that you don't have the fly ability. You can't fly across the land. You can't get a bird's eye view and really scope out different areas and get places easier or faster. It's more inconvenient. So they tried to make this whole elaborate level design where, yes, look, you have bridges and underpaths and all this amazingness. And it backfired because all you're doing is wasting my time. I'm not here playing this game because I give a shit about your level design because it was never anything special to begin with. And graphically and camera view angle point wise, it was never anything that was an increase to the game. So by making the level design larger and more complicated, more maze-like, you're not helping the player, you're not adding more gems and hiding and sequences and depth, you're making it more annoying to get places. When that is encouraged and fueled by the quests, which are continuously back and forth type deals, hey, why don't you head back to this merchant and then go all the way back 20 minutes to where you were to report back that you gave a package away of some regard. The level design is a huge detriment. People don't care in this style of game if it is very simplistic level design with 6 paths and a town center, or if it's one straight linear path. But what they don't want is an entire huge maze, because that maze doesn't add anything. It makes it longer, more drawn out, and it takes away from the one thing that they're here for, which is the combat. The area that they want to experience and excel in is fighting enemies, to challenge themselves against the rivals and feel a sense of progression. And you're drawing out the intervals in between those areas of progression and a sense of power or accomplishment. The level design slows your gameplay down, it adds more in a negative fashion, and it just hurts it overall. So at the end of the day, when all is said and done, what does this game have? When it comes to combat, yeah, the skills may be a little bit different, little tweaks here and there, a little balance here and there. Not that the balance was really messed up in the other games. It still has some bugs here and there, not anywhere near as their last one, which was Warriors of the North. But the combat's fundamentally exactly the same from the baseline of its series. What about graphically? Is it been improved graphically in any regard? Maybe a couple of textures here and there, a coat of paint, a little bit more size or depth than the first game they came out with, of course. It's their 4th game. Of course they're going to have a little bit, but the aesthetic is exactly the same. The animation, the graphical quality, while it works, is exactly the same. There's really no difference. And that is bad. That is bad. Because when there's no difference, you're not trying. You're not reaching for the next height. You're not reaching for the next goal. You're not saying, well, what can we make better? Where can we make things easier to access? Or how can we make stuff more exciting to the player? Do we change this up? Do we add this UI? Do we add different panels? What do we do? This game is exactly the same as its predecessors. There is really very little outside of the storyline and aesthetic that it was trying to go for that are different. The combat is exactly what you could expect from the King's Bounty series. But the story is horrible. In between a combat that doesn't respect you, a story which is just downright a waste of time, it doesn't respect your time, it is so effing annoying, and a level design which draws everything out even more and becomes more convoluted than anything else, I cannot recommend this game. Yeah, the combat's fun, but you can get the exact same combat from King's Bounty: The Armored Princess. Yeah, I would recommend that game, but this one, hell no. This is a disgrace. This game has been so bad that should they come out with a 5th game in this series, I can sincerely see myself highly questioning and most likely not even picking up their next game, because this one is that bad. This is the type of game that will kill a series, or if this was a movie, it would kill that franchise or some variable. So if you have respect for the series and been on the fence, or if you want to get into this King's Bounty world, then start with The Armored Princess. But do not pick this up. I cannot recommend this. I did not enjoy my time in it because it became far too easy, way too fast, even on impossible. The story is a freaking joke, and it just wastes my time more than anything else. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope it's been helpful to you, for I'm a SocioPsycho, and this has been Mob Reviews. I'll be glad to put this one in my trash bin, and I'll see you next time.